Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to New Knowledge. I'm Aaron, and today we are looking at a situation that is evolving very quickly. And depending on how you look at it, it could either be a contained operation or the beginning of something much bigger. Because on day 2 of the US naval blockade around Iran, what we're seeing is not just pressure. It's a complete shift in how control is being exercised over one of the most critical regions in the world. And right now, the Strait of Hormuz is at the center of it all. According to reports, the United States has moved aggressively to establish near total control over maritime activity in this area. This is no longer a symbolic deployment or a warning signal. It is a full-scale operational posture designed to monitor, control, and if necessary, stop vessels moving through the region. Within the first hour of the blockade taking effect, US-guided missile destroyers were already moving into formation, supported by continuous aerial surveillance. What this creates is a layered system of control, a network where sea, air, and intelligence all work together. And the message behind that deployment is very clear. This is not about deterrence anymore. This is about enforcement. From a strategic standpoint, this represents a major shift. For years, Iran has relied on the geography of the Strait of Hormuz as a form of leverage. The ability to threaten disruption gave Tehran influence far beyond its actual naval power. But now, that dynamic is being reversed. The same maritime space that once gave Iran strategic advantage is becoming a point of vulnerability. And that's where this operation becomes more than just a blockade. It becomes a redefinition of control. At the center of this effort is a combined military and economic objective. The United States is not just trying to dominate the waters. It's targeting Iran's ability to generate revenue, specifically through oil exports. And that brings us to the ports. Along Iran's southern coastline, several key locations are now under intense pressure. One of the first to be targeted is Konarak. This is not just a commercial port. It plays a role in Iran's logistic networks and supports the development of fast attack boats, which are a key part of Iran's naval strategy. By targeting a location like this, the US is not only disrupting trade, it's limiting Iran's ability to carry out asymmetric operations at sea. And that matters, because those fast boats have long been one of Iran's main tools for challenging larger naval forces. But in this environment, those tactics are becoming much harder to execute. The US Navy doesn't need to operate close to the coastline. It can project power from a distance, reducing its exposure to drones, missiles, and swarm attacks. That allows it to maintain constant pressure without taking on unnecessary risk. And above all this, you have surveillance. High-altitude reconnaissance drones like the RQ-4 Global Hawk are providing continuous monitoring of Iran's key oil infrastructure. Every tanker movement, every loading operation, everything is being watched, and that makes it extremely difficult for Iran to find workarounds. Even tactics like reflagging vessels, trying to disguise them as ships from other countries, become much harder when every movement is being tracked and verified. Now, if you look at Iran's oil infrastructure, one location stands out above the rest: Karg Island. This is the heart of Iran's oil export system. At its peak capacity, it handles the majority of the country's crude shipments, with millions of barrels moving through it every day. So, placing it under constant surveillance effectively puts Iran's main revenue stream under direct pressure. Then you have Lavan Island. Smaller, but still important. Its deep water facilities allow large tankers to dock, which makes it one of the few places where exports can still move at scale. But, again, under constant monitoring, even those opportunities become limited. And this is where Iran's strategy becomes clear. Instead of relying on a single point, it has spread its infrastructure across multiple ports and islands. This creates redundancy, making it harder to completely shut down exports. But at the same time, it means that more locations need to be monitored, defended, and maintained under pressure. And that stretches resources. Further along the coast, Bushehr has reportedly taken significant damage from repeated strikes. But here's the thing. Infrastructure can be repaired, and Iran has shown in the past that it can restore damaged facilities to keep exports flowing, even at reduced capacity. So the goal here isn't necessarily total destruction. It's disruption. Consistent, sustained disruption. Because that's what creates long-term pressure. Now, while all of this is happening in the Strait of Hormuz, attention is also shifting south towards Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This is another critical route connecting the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean. As risks increase in Hormuz, more shipments are being redirected through this corridor. But that doesn't make things safer, because this area comes with its own risks. Iran-backed Houthi forces in Yemen have already issued threats, and that introduces the possibility of disruption spreading to another major energy route. So instead of one choke point, you now have two areas of concern, and that increases the global impact, because this is no longer just about Iran. It's about the stability of global energy flows. And that ties back into the broader strategy. By targeting Iran's oil exports, the US is not just applying pressure on the government, it's affecting the financial structure that supports the entire system, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that's where the funding comes from. So when oil revenue is disrupted, the effects ripple outward, militarily, politically, and economically. At the same time, diplomacy is still in play, but right now it's not moving smoothly. Negotiations have stalled, primarily over Iran's nuclear program. The US is demanding a long-term suspension of uranium enrichment, around 20 years. Iran is offering something much shorter, closer to 5 years. And that gap is significant because it reflects fundamentally different goals. One side wants to eliminate the long-term threat. The other wants to preserve future options. And until that gap is closed, progress will remain limited. The US is demanding a long-term suspension of uranium enrichment, around 20 years. Iran is offering something much shorter, closer to 5 years. And that gap is significant because it reflects fundamentally different goals. One side wants to eliminate the long-term threat. The other wants to preserve future options. And until that gap is closed, progress will remain limited. Vice President JD Vance has taken a hard line on this, accusing Iran of using economic pressure tactics and warning that those tactics can be matched. Meanwhile, President Trump has escalated the situation further, making it clear that any Iranian vessel approaching the blockade zone could face immediate destruction. That kind of statement raises the stakes significantly because it increases the risk of miscalculation. In an environment this tense, even a small incident could trigger a much larger response. And we're already starting to see the global effects. Energy markets are reacting. Prices are beginning to shift. And major powers are paying attention. Russia and China in particular are exploring ways to maintain access to Iranian oil, potentially working together to bypass or mitigate US pressure. If that happens, it adds another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. At the same time, Iran is also adapting. There are reports of efforts to develop alternative export routes, including pipeline systems designed to bypass the Strait of Hormuz entirely. If successful, that would reduce reliance on vulnerable maritime routes and give Tehran more flexibility in the long term. But those are not immediate solutions. They take time. And right now, time is exactly what Iran is running short on. On the military side, the US presence remains overwhelming. Carrier strike groups, advanced aircraft like the F-35, early warning systems, drones, destroyers, submarines, all working together in a coordinated structure. This is not just about firepower, it's about integration. Each component supports the other, creating a system that is very difficult to challenge directly. And against that, Iran's remaining naval forces, mostly smaller, fast attack craft, have limited options. Those tactics are still dangerous, but in this environment, they are increasingly constrained. So, as we look ahead, the situation remains highly unstable. The pressure is building, the risks are rising, and the margin for error is getting smaller. The next few days could be critical because depending on how both sides respond, this could either move toward negotiation or escalate into something far more serious. And that's where things stand right now. Thank you for watching. If you want more in-depth analysis of global politics and strategic developments, make sure to stay with us here on New Knowledge. I'm Aaron, and I'll see you on the next one.